Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Oh, I see your lovely book up there that we're going to be chatting about today. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you. It's been almost a year since it was published, but with
Isn't that
COVID, it's
crazy?
like, has it been a year?
Yeah,
What's going on?
it's insane. It's amazing. All right, so this is recording. That's good. I'm going to make sure that it's recording on the right spot so that I have this amazing content to share with everybody at the end. I'm going to get Dr. Jordan to introduce herself, but I'll give you guys a little bit of an idea of my goals for this meeting and what I want to chat about. I'm a firm believer that we have to look at everybody's health as a holistic means. So that's everything from your gut health to your hormones, to your mindset, but also your sense of desire and sex drive. And that's one thing that is often not considered, not talked about, too taboo, or it's not really taken a critical eye and really looking at, what is your mindset? What is your hormones? What has your life experience been? And all the factors. And like Dr. Jordan often says on your Instagram, it's not always just low testosterone. That is the reason for low sex drive. So we're going to talk all about that, what you should be looking out for, ways to increase desire, and we'll just roll with it that way. So I'm going to leave it over to you, Dr. Jordans, to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And wouldn't it be so much easier if it just was a low testosterone problem? So in a nutshell, I'm Dr. Jordan Wiggins. I wrote the book, The Pink Canary, The Hidden Secret to Optimum Wellness for Women, because I saw this massive problem in my practice where thousands of women were saying they had low libido and were either too scared to talk about it, didn't know where to turn, or we'd fixed things like balance their hormones, weight was coming off, energy was improving, all these things were improving, but their libido was staying the same. So what I started to notice was low libido was a predictor for other health problems, and it wasn't that complete wellness that you were talking about.
And sometimes libido can be seen as like a nice to get to, or, well, you can probably just live with that. I think that's the attitude that sometimes, we take with it. And the reality is it really does impact your overall wellness, everything from your relationships, your sense of relationship with yourself, but as well as your partner. What else can libido impact?
So immune function is a big topic right now. Having a good libido, orgasms especially increase immune function, which I just think with the pandemic, there's been a bigger focus on things that we can do to improve immune function. And orgasm is one of them, research proven, and no one's talking about it.
And yes, I was looking up for this talk, even some research on just the act of having an orgasm will reduce or potentially may reduce your risk of breast cancer. So they found individuals who experienced more orgasms actually were less likely to develop breast cancers. And I'm assuming that's because of the role that it plays in terms of the immune function.
Immune function and hormone balance. It's a nice reset for our cortisol curve, inflammation. Another benefit of having sex or orgasm is pain relief or pain management. So, and there's very little, limited research done on these things, which I find fascinating, but we have a natural way and a free way to reduce pain, increase immune function, like you were mentioning, relationships and self-confidence. And when all these things, when we're more connected, we're not lonely, that decreases risk of chronic disease. So it really is fascinating that because of the nature of the topic, the research isn't being done, or it's done on a very small scale and it's not talked about because it's so, hush hush.
Yeah, and it's too bad as well. I find a lot of the research leaves women out, right? Or they do more of their studies on men because men they're more even and level. There's less variables to have to consider in terms of research. So historically, most of our research is done on men and kind of extrapolated to fit the women's piece, which is too bad, right?
Exactly. And with sexual health, it's supposed to be about 1 in 2 women is the statistic that suffer from sexual dysfunction in their lifetime. So almost 50%.
Mm-hmm.
And the equivalent research for men is about 17%. So 50 versus 17, and both are underreported. I think men are having more and more of an issue here too, and also not talking about it, but
yeah,
that's for another conversation. And if 17% of men have this issue and they have Viagra, which really does help the majority of men to be able to perform and be more satisfied with their sex life, but we don't have a treatment option for women like that, but yet the problem is so much greater.
Yeah. And for those of you who are on here, take the advantage of the comment section. If you have specific questions, make sure to answer them. We're happy to answer them as we're live as well. One question that I want to start off with, you spoke about 1 in 2 women experience sexual dysfunction. What does that mean? Like, how can we put that into ways that everyone on here can understand?
For sure. So sexual dysfunction is an umbrella term. So it's not desiring to have sex, not being able to orgasm or difficulty orgasming, and having pain with sex.
Okay. And in terms of inability to orgasm, what percentage of the clientele that you see has an inability to orgasm because they're only using internal penetration?
A huge portion, because they probably, for most of the women that I work with, it's a desire issue, or there's a component of it that it is a lack of desire. Because even if you have painful sex, you're not going to want to have sex, or if it's difficult for you to orgasm, you're not going to be motivated to have sex. So there's always the desire issue as some component. We have to work on mindset and all that stuff. But when it comes to specifically orgasm, 70% of women or do not orgasm from penetration only. So
that is like penis entering the vagina.
Yes.
So the problem is a lot of, we have ways that we're educated about sexual health. In school, they tell you, you have sex one time, you're going to get pregnant, you're going to get an STD, and your life's going to be over. Or fear-based, right? Or women will learn from, the internet and porn and things like that, where it's, a woman gets penetrated once and she's like screaming, right? So we have this, it's not talked about what actually is normal. And I want to reiterate that it's very, very normal to not be able to experience an orgasm with just internal penetration. And I think that's missing as part of our education. And a lot of women will feel, oh, there's something wrong with me.
And just the fact of feeling like there's something wrong with you decreases libido. And we see that over and over. And if we were educated we're educated based on reproduction, which is penis in vagina. And we're also educated on the way that most men find sex pleasurable, which is penis in vagina. But if we told men, you are supposed to orgasm by me licking your elbow versus penetration, then majority of men would feel like there's something wrong with them. Yeah. And really that's what we're doing to women by saying penis and vagina is like the holy grail of sex. And if that's not how you orgasm, if you're unable to achieve orgasm that way, then you're broken. Yeah. So it's really backwards.
It is really backwards. And the other thing too that we often are not educated on is the variability in what is normal to reach climax or reach orgasm in women versus men. It's not the same. Do you have an average number of minutes for men versus women?
I wrote for Mind Body Green on this one, and I was against like putting a time limit on it. I think for men, the average is like 3 to 5 minutes, and for women, it's something like 18 or 20.
Longer.
But really, we're expecting sexual encounters for women to take like at least a half an hour to be really enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important to know, right? You can't think of yourself as a man in a woman's body. There's completely different processes at play. And some of the research that I was looking at was quite interesting in terms of this desire piece. And maybe you can comment more on this, where for men, desire often precedes arousal, where sometimes for women, you have to have that physical contact and getting the arousal before the desire will actually kick in. So sometimes when I'm questioning women in my practice, I say, well, once you start having sex and doing foreplay, is it enjoyable for you then? Well, yeah, I enjoy it then. How can you reframe that mindset for those women who, they're too tired, they have the mindset that they don't want to have intercourse, but as soon as they do it, then they're like, okay, this is fine.
So that's another big, we call it sexual health miseducation, where we're being taught incorrectly about how things work. And then if we have the belief that we're broken or there's something wrong with us, it's going to disrupt how we view ourselves sexually and all of it. So the difference there is between spontaneous desire and responsive desire. So we see in movies, we see in porn, which can be people's like default sex education, because we're really not talking about it, that, you're supposed to be work an 8 to 10 hour day, come home, cook a healthy meal, clean up, pack your kids' lunches. Well, I mean, I guess if they're homeschooled now, then maybe it's different. But you're supposed to be doing all these things, and then in the midst of all of that go, oh, I would really like to have sex right now. And that's not how it works for the majority of women. The majority of women have responsive desire, which means if they're in a sexual context, then that part of their brain can turn on. But when we're functioning in that sort of sense of overwhelm or sympathetic overdrive all the time, where we're go, 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 so many things on our to-do list, it's not going to enter our minds. So very few women's minds work that way. But men can sort of like shift those gears faster. And again, this is general. It doesn't mean it applies to everyone, but for the most part, women need to be in an explicitly sexual context to get aroused. So I'm always telling the women that I work with, don't discount it if you're not in the mood right away. Allow yourself the chance to get there. But that's about changing expectation with both partners.
So also this is about giving yourself grace and allowing yourself to know that it's okay and it's normal. If you've got screaming kids around you and they're doing your homework and you're like doing the dishes, to not be overcome with this huge level of desire that I just need to drop everything and whip upstairs is not really a realistic expectation.
Definitely not. It's not to say that it won't happen or that some women's minds don't work that way, but the overwhelming majority of women,
they need that
won't happen.
Okay, so what would be some tips in order to start shifting into more of that situational context where women can start to feel sexually aroused, then they reach that desire to have sex? What are some tips there?
Something that we teach is pleasure as a practice. So it's one of those things, right? You want to increase your strength. If you're gonna go to the gym once, it's not gonna do anything. So or using yoga or meditation or anything that we do, we have to repeat over and over. So we get women to start incorporating things that make them feel good. And it doesn't even need to be bedroom things or explicitly sexual things. It could be drinking wine out of your nice wine glass that you wouldn't normally use, but using that on the day-to-day. Getting a really, and I mean, I guess some of these things are pre-COVID days, but maybe going to get a drive-through to get a really delicious latte or treat or something that you wouldn't do. It feels a little extravagant, but it makes you feel really good. Listening to music while you're making dinner, lighting a candle, just doing anything throughout your day that makes you feel good.
Right.
And then that's starting to shift that balance from stress and overwhelm into a state where you are more likely to be able to receive pleasure.
Yeah. Okay. And then what about in terms of, you know, creating that space for your partner? Like, do you recommend couples or even, you know, masturbation having a set time on the calendar where you go and do that, or set times of day? Or is it kind of just how you feel?
This is a really, I get pushback on this one a little bit, but I wrote about it for so many media outlets that I think people need to hear it because it's one that keeps coming up.
Yeah.
Scheduled intimacy dates is something that I get on the calendar for all of my clients. And this is time that's blocked off with both you and your partner, and it can be whatever you want it to be. It could be dinner with no phones, the children are with a babysitter or in bed or something, but we try and eliminate those stressors so that you and your partner can connect. And that can mean eye contact. That can mean sitting on the couch, cuddling, watching TV. Phones being away is a big one though, because we want to sort of eliminate distractors and just bring the two of you together. We give like scripts to our clients or like questions to ask, because sometimes things have drifted so far apart you don't even know where to start. So it's like a little game of things you can ask that kind of spark that connection again. And it's amazing. One example is, tell me how you felt when we first met. And that's a good one to kind of, you know, you're just shifting things, because what do you want to, you want to talk about things that are wrong with the house or money or stuff that's stressing you out about the kids, right? There's just so many gross things that aren't turn-ons that are easy to talk about because they're top of mind.
Yeah.
So
I love that.
Having the time scheduled is really, really important. And people think, again, that sex is supposed to be spontaneous, but that is, if you're waiting for it to be spontaneous,
it's probably not worked up until this point.
Exactly. You're going to keep on waiting. And I mentioned in my book that even in the beginning, it was not that spontaneous, because if you were going on a date with somebody, you might have shaved your legs. You probably planned which underwear you were going to wear. You picked the restaurant and what you were going to do. So that was all premeditated too. It felt spontaneous. It felt new and exciting, but it really wasn't spontaneous at all. We just have that, again, that it's a myth that is keeping us stuck in the sex rut.
Right. Perfect. Okay. And the one thing I wanted to go back to, because we didn't really touch on it, if the vast majority, or well over 50% of women, can't orgasm with just penetrative sex, how do they orgasm?
So the clitoris is a little anatomy, and it's part of my program that we're going and doing like the sex education you wish you had, because we need to relearn it all. The clitoris has 8,000 nerve endings, which is double what the penis has. So the clitoris is how most women orgasm and find the most pleasure. Okay. Some women, based on like their anatomy, their partner's anatomy, if they're having vaginal orgasms, it's actually because the internal part of the clitoris is being stimulated in their vaginal canal.
The clitoris, again, is not just like a little tiny spot. It has two longer legs that are going actually into the inside of the vagina. Is that more or less?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So it's this bigger internal structure. And if it can be stimulated, that's like G-spot stimulation. Really what we're stimulating is the clitoris from the inside. So overwhelming majority of women orgasm from clitoral stimulation. And that could be with a toy, a mouth, hands, anything. But that's how the overwhelming number of women orgasm.
Yeah, and like what would be some tips in terms of women who might feel uncomfortable communicating their sexual desires with their partner, right? Like how do you, if you can orgasm on your own through masturbation, how do you take that transition and speak to your partner so that you can orgasm in an encounter with your partner? Because I see that disconnect a lot. It's, you know, I can't orgasm with my partner, but I can orgasm on my own.
So there's a couple issues that we see there, and communication is a massive one. Because you could have 2 kids with someone and be married for 13 years and not be able to ask for what you want in the bedroom. It's this fascinating thing that I see all the time. And beliefs are a huge part too that we have to work with, because we've got to work with our beliefs to feel confident enough to figure out what we want and then how to ask for it, and feel worthy enough to receive it. So there's sort of a couple blocks along the way, but specific with the communication one, always what you want to do is, and this is because I don't know specific cases about a specific relationship, but in general, what works is you want to enroll your partner on your team. So men, for the most part, they love to accomplish a task. So if you can make it like frame it like that, because a lot of people are worried that they're going to hurt their partner's feelings, or men can be very sensitive about these things, because just like women are taught that, you know, be a lady, if you like sex, you're a, you know, all these nasty words. I don't know if I can say on your show, but everyone knows what I'm talking about, right? There's lots of ways to degrade women, lots of names sexually. So just like we're called that, men are not. They're taught to know, like just to know. And if they have to ask, then that means like they're less than sexually. So they're really put at a disadvantage in the same way that we are with these scripts that we learn, which is insane. But I would say, you know, ask your partner, say like, I'd like to try something new. How would you feel about, watching me touch myself? Because if you can make yourself orgasm, you're touching yourself in a certain way, pressure that is working for you. And that just saying to your partner, like, watch me touch myself, they'll start to pick up on what it is you're doing and how you're doing it. So that'd be a simple way to start.
Yeah. And approaching it that way, like you said, most men are very task oriented, so they want to complete this task, right? So one of the, I don't want to like say the worst things that women can do, but a lot of women will fake an orgasm, or as soon as a man ejaculates, they're like, everything's done, we can go to sleep. So, you know, it's not normal for a man and a woman to have an orgasm at the exact same time, right? Just because the man's ejaculated doesn't mean that the sexual experience has to be over either. Is something that, you know, just communicating that with your partner as well.
That's true. And I think a lot of faking, because most women do that because they think that that's what they're supposed to do. faking orgasm is literally teaching your partner what you do not like and what doesn't work. So oftentimes we've had to undo years of that. So yeah, reframing what sex is and making sure that mutual orgasm isn't the goal, like you said, because if penetration is not how 70% of women achieve orgasm and that's what you're trying to do and have a mutual orgasm, it's not going to work. Turn taking, and it's really interesting when you look at the research for rates of orgasm and satisfying sex. Same sex couples have better rates of orgasming from a sexual encounter than heterosexual couples. So like 2 women or 2 men in a sexual encounter, their orgasm rates are much, much higher than a man and a woman together, which is really...
The timing is better in terms of the time it takes to orgasm, or just the experience?
2 things. Because same-sex couples, they have to navigate their sexuality on their own as a community, and with each person that they meet, because the script of penis and vagina makes a baby and that's what sex is, that doesn't work for them. So they are having to look at like sexual exploration, checking like all the items on the menu, not just trying to order the same thing over and over and over. So yeah, it's basically because they have to define what sex is for them, and they have to do it with each partner that they have. And because they're not constantly trying to fit the narrative of penis and vagina mutual orgasm, and it's more focused on turn taking. So they have much more satisfying sex.
A really big light bulb moment, right? Like this narrative that we're constantly teaching and we're constantly trying to subscribe to, in the end, is not achieving what we want and may actually be counterproductive for us.
It's completely counterproductive, because if we taught pleasure education from day one, which is what feels good to me, you know, the pace, the type of touch, and we were taught to kind of explore that, and that was how we approached sex, as opposed to trying to do the same thing over and over. But if it was more of an exploration, that would even help us through different life stages, like, you know, after you had a baby, or perimenopause and menopause, when certain things that used to feel good don't feel good anymore. If you were constantly on this journey of pleasure seeking or exploration, and you were constantly, you know, checking in, does this feel good, or how about that? And if that's how we approach sex, then we wouldn't keep hitting these roadblocks at life stages either.
Yeah, and many individuals, especially with looking at emotional eating, right? We look at negative emotions like shame, fear, guilt. Where did that come up that's leading to this behavior, or this crossroad where you can't achieve what you want to achieve, and it's preventing you from getting there? Those same negative emotions, which I'm sure if we did a poll on, you know, what comes up for you, and you guys might even be sitting here listening to us talk and kind of feel like, oh, this is a little bit of an awkward conversation, or this makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable or on edge. So those types of emotions have been ingrained in you based off of your experience up until this point. So removing those negative emotions can really help get you into a place of self-confidence, ability to ask what you're looking for, and be able to communicate with your partner too.
Exactly. And I find if we're teaching people to be able to ask in the bedroom, they can ask in any context. Boardroom, with a difficult mother-in-law, with their kids.
Yeah.
Because if we can undo that guilt, shame, everything surrounding sex, and you can really get clear on, this is what I want, and how do I ask for it? If you can do it about sex, you can do it about anything.
Yes, I completely agree. And positive momentum in some areas of your life really can grow and create momentum in all areas as well. I really see that.
Yeah, and we see a massive, I never thought that this was the case, but we see a massive link between libido and weight loss as well. Because I think a lot of people are doing their like numbing behaviors or binging behaviors because they are lonely, they're disconnected, they're trying to fill a void. So it's an interesting
Relationship.
tie. Yeah, because you can think, if you think back to a time in your life where your libido was great and it was high, how did everything feel? You weren't looking forward to drinking the half bottle of wine and sitting on the couch eating chips watching Netflix, right? You were looking forward to seeing your partner and connecting with somebody. So we can really compare and contrast, like, what was life like when your libido was great, and what does it feel like when your libido's low? And we notice a lot of like food or overeating and looking to reward yourself with things that might make you feel good in the moment but don't make you feel good after type choices.
Absolutely. And the last question I wanted to ask you before you wrap up, and I know you're probably going to dive deeper into this in your programs and courses, but just a quick tip, little takeaway for someone who's at the stage where they're just so overwhelmed, so tired. They're in that mindset of like, that is the, like, I can't add another thing to my plate.
I get it. And that is 90% of the women that we work with are just like, they sign up for our like boot camps or some of our like master classes or whatever because their partner wants them to, or the pressure that's been put on the relationship by their partner. Because they say, I don't care if I ever have sex again, but I need to figure something out because it's ruining my relationship, kind of thing. But for them, they don't care.
It's a nice to have.
So, yeah, exactly. So for those women, I always encourage them to think back to what was life like when they had good libido, and high energy and motivation is always, it's always on the list for women at that point. So it might seem like another to-do, but once we start incorporating pleasure, once we start changing those hormone cascades and everything, the abundance of energy that you and motivation that you have, it extends to everything else. Like, you'd be happy to fold a load of laundry or you know, complete a project for work because you're in a state that you're overflowing versus like an empty cup. Yeah. So by prioritizing sexual health, we're prioritizing every other aspect of your life.
Yeah. And as a wrap up, orgasms help with immune system, help with energy, reduce pain, better mental clarity, reducing risks of uterine, breast cancer,
prostate cancer for men.
Overall wellness, right? Oxytocin, better connections.
Better, like for depression, anxiety, mental health, there's some research there as well that orgasms improving all of those things, and research in self-confidence and agency, which I think is big. And I think that's also really big for teaching our daughters and sons and younger generations that like healthy sexuality is like a tool that can be used for us instead of a weapon against us in our relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And how can individuals find you? How can they learn more about your programs? And your book is fantastic, so speak about that too.
All right. So the best place to find me is on Instagram at Dr. Jordan Wiggins. I'm on there daily checking my messages. So send me a direct message if you have any questions. My website is thepleasurecollective.com. Tons of info there. I have a weekly blog where we're constantly putting out our sexual health re-education stuff that you can find. And one of the best experiences that we offer for free is the Pleasure Mindset Bootcamp. And we're actually doing that February 1st through 5th. It's a private Facebook community. So I can
I'll get the details.
Yeah, I can send you the link for that for them to sign up if they want. But yeah, completely free. We cover all of these topics. There's a workbook. And it's just a great starting point to start reframing all of these ideas and get better connected relationships. And yeah, my book, The Pink Canary, all of these things we talked about today are in the book in more detail. And at the end of every chapter, there's like worksheets and reflections, because one big thing that I noticed in the sexual health and wellness industry is there's a lot of theory and some great stuff out there, but there really wasn't any actionable tips or things for people to start doing and start working on to change this for their relationships. So that's why the Pink Canary is laid out like that.
And I really love your approach too, because I mean, we've had this conversation before that there's not much out there in terms of, there's the medical side, which really just dismisses, you're busy, you're a mom, that's normal. You shouldn't have a sex drive. That's what women are told. Or there's really elaborate out there practices that some, people resonate with, which is great. But I love your approach because it's very, here's what the research says, here's how we're going to change it, here's your actionable steps in a very, easy to consume, safe environment, the way that you present it, which I really like.
Thank you.
Sorry, one more question with your boot camp before we go. Is this for primarily couples, or is this individual? Can you bring your
That's for women. Primarily, so it's for women. We only admit women into the community. What I find does happen though is a lot of women will watch the replays and do the exercises with their partners afterward.
Yeah. And all-inclusive, women of any sexual orientation, any relationship status, everybody really needs this information to empower themselves. And it's super fascinating too, because it's not stuff that we're often exposed to. I mean, you and I are, right? We talk about it a lot, and you more so, but the average individual, our sexual health really needs to change. So thank you for putting this together. I think it's a fantastic resource. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great.
Absolutely. Perfect. We'll connect soon. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.